This program provides education, not advice. Sponsors pay a fee for endorsements and interviews. See the truthayf.com disclosure page for details.
This is where technology, innovation, and personal finance come together.
This is the truth about your future with Rick Edelman. Brought to you by Global X ETFs, dedicated to providing investors with unexplored intelligent solutions, and by Invesco QQQ. Anyone can become an agent of innovation with Invesco QQQ. Invesco Distributors, Inc.
It's Friday, May 12th. Have you experienced ageism? Are you worried about recession? Well, ageism and recession, you might figure, is a really bad combination. If you're over 50 and you lose your job due to the recession, finding a new job you figure will be a lot harder, but maybe not. Employers are now saying in surveys that they are fed up with younger workers. Managers are complaining that younger workers tend to call in sick. They arrive late. They spend a lot of time on social media. And they tend to quit more often than older workers. In a recent poll by the Wall Street Journal, 75% of those over 65 said hard work is very important to them. Only 61% of those under 30 said that. So guess who bosses are hiring? People 55 plus. 2,500 companies, we're talking big ones, Bank of America, Microsoft, KinderCare, H&R Block, they've signed a pledge with AARP to fairly consider workers who are over 50 when they hire. The 55 plus crowd is now the fastest growing segment of the workforce, according to the Department of Labor. And it's not just because companies want to hire them, it's also because older people need the jobs. They haven't saved as much as they need, so they need the income. And they're also in pretty good health. If you're 65, odds are good you're a lot healthier today than your parents were when they were 65. And that means you're able to work. And you also want to work. You want to stay engaged and productive. You want to contribute to society. People over 55 are mature and experienced, and they're finding employers increasingly happy to hire them. The EEOC says that age discrimination complaints are down 45% over the past decade. And guess who tends to be complaining now about ageism? It's not older workers, it's the younger ones. Millennials and Gen Z say they're not getting hired or promoted because their generation has a bad rep. So if you're in your 50s, 60s, or 70s, good for you. It's a hot job market. And if you're younger, don't worry, you'll grow out of your problem. Coming up next, conversation with Bernie Moreno, the chairman of Champ Titles, about how he's using blockchain technology to revolutionize car titles. Stay with us for more here on The Truth About Your Future.
Support for Rick Edelman's podcast comes from Invesco QQQ. What do all the greatest innovations have in common? Agents, people who participate in progress by supporting cutting-edge ideas. Invesco QQQ is a fund that allows you access to innovators of the NASDAQ 100 all-in-one fund, so you don't have to be an inventor to help create what's next to come. Anyone can become an agent of innovation with Invesco QQQ. Learn more at Invesco.com/QQQ. There are risks when investing in ETFs, including possible loss of money. ETFs' risks are similar to those of stocks. Investments in the tech sector are subject to greater risk and more volatility than more diversified investments. The NASDAQ 100 Index comprises the 100 largest non-financial companies on the NASDAQ. You can't invest directly into an index. Before investing, carefully read and consider fund investment objectives, risks, charges, expenses, and more in prospectus at Invesco.com. Invesco Distributors, Inc.
You're listening to The Truth About Your Future. You know, I talk a lot about crypto very often here on the show. I'm a big proponent of the fundamental technological innovation that this represents. But really, a very common question that I get is, Rick, you know, what is it good for? What do you actually do with it? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And to provide a really tangible example of this, I'm really happy to bring onto the program Bernie Moreno. He is the chairman of Champ Tiles. Bernie, welcome to the show.
Rick, thanks for having me. Thank you for talking about technology and really spreading the movement out there.
Well, your background is not what I think most folks would instinctively associate with crypto or blockchain technology. So let's take a step backward first. Tell everybody your history and background in business.
Certainly. So when I was 26 years old, I was working for General Motors, and a car dealer in Boston hired me to run one of his car dealerships. I'd never worked in a dealership in any capacity in my life. I became his general manager right away. Learned a lot.
Were you a car guy? Were you a gearhead?
I love cars since the time I was a kid. So that's why I went to school in Michigan. That's why I went to work for General Motors. So always loved cars. The guy who I worked for loved cars, which is a connection. So here I was, 26 years old, running this dealership, made it his most profitable store in his company. Worked for him for 12 years, and out of the blue in 2005, 18 years ago, Mercedes called me and said, hey, we've got the worst, most underperforming dealership in the entire country. We'd like you to buy it. So I took every cent I had and every cent I didn't have, quite honestly, bought this little tiny dealership that sold 4 cars per month, and we built it into the largest seller of luxury automobiles anywhere in the central US, and then added 14 other dealerships, did $1 billion in sales. And then funny story, Rick. So about 8 years ago, my youngest son, who's now 24, came to me from school at the end of the day and said, Dad, I got one word for you. I said, what's that, Kevin? He goes, Bitcoin. I said, what the heck is Bitcoin? He goes, so he said, it's going to be the future. Take every cent you have and put it into Bitcoin. So as a joke, I called up the guy who ran my financial advisor from Bernstein, who ran the central US, and said, hey, Shane, my son says that I should put every cent I have into Bitcoin and take it out of your accounts. He said, well, don't do that. But, you know, blockchain is really interesting. I said, well, tell me about that. That conversation led to a year later, he leaves Bernstein, I sell my car dealerships, and we started Champ Titles.
So that's quite a journey, and it's not at all uncommon for people to first hear about this through their kids. And it was kudos to your financial advisor for having been familiar with crypto to be able to say, here's an element of it you ought to be paying attention to. So that was a great segue. Incredible career you've had in the automotive field. Now describe for us Champ Titles, what that company does, and how. And trust me, everybody, this will eventually get us to blockchain and crypto.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So everybody knows when you buy a car, there's a physical piece of paper that the state issues to you saying, hey, you own this car. And if you have a loan on it, that piece of paper says you have a loan on it, and the bank holds on typically to that piece of paper.
And of course, you're talking about the title to the car.
Yeah, the car title. So our thesis was this physical piece of paper causes enormous friction in the system. It's a pain for banks, it's a pain for consumers, it's a pain for car dealers. So we said, why don't we take that piece of paper and convert it to a digital process, and not an electronic title, because that's different, but actually a truly digital title. And we launched the company about 4 years ago. We're now the full onboard title issuing authority in West Virginia. We're in a few other states that we're not allowed to talk about because of NDAs, but West Virginia has become the first state in the country to publicly announce that they are fully digital, no more paper, and actually just passed a law to allow West Virginia to serve as a clearinghouse. So think of it like Memphis is for Federal Express, West Virginia will be for car titles. So you could move a Connecticut title to Florida via West Virginia digitally.
So you stress that you said digital, which is not the same as electronic. Explain the difference between the two.
Yeah, so an electronic title is where the data is maintained electronically, but ultimately when you want to move the title, it has to drop down into paper form, wet ink signatures, notarizations, mailing it. Ours is think of it like a boarding pass on your iPhone. When you get on a plane, there's no more paper. It's barcodes, and you can transfer it seamlessly with no friction.
And how does any of this relate to crypto?
So we use the same underlying technology. So what we do is we use blockchain as our underlying data structures, and we use smart contracts to facilitate the transfer of the title from one party to the other.
And are you doing that simply as a matter of choice to saying we're going to use blockchain technology to build this, or was it a matter of not having an option, that it was either blockchain or not being able to do it?
Well, you need an immutable ledger. You need something that can't be hacked, something that's incredibly secure, incredibly efficient. And we found blockchain is the most efficient way to make that happen. And it's worked really, really well. I mean, we've got SOC certification. We've had 5 public companies that have invested in Champ titles that have all examined our tech, and it's as foolproof as it can be. I mean, as you know, it's almost impossible to hack blockchain.
Now, I don't mean any disrespect to the great state of West Virginia, but if I were to ask people, give me a list of the 5 states where you anticipate innovation emanating from, I'm not sure West Virginia would be on that list. So how did you strike your relationship with the state and get their reception in such a favorable way and first mover thinking?
Yeah, no, all the credit in the world goes to the governor. So Governor Jim Justice is a business guy. He's not a politician. He's somebody who's really an independent thinker, and he wants to put West Virginia back on the map in a lot of ways. And so when we presented this to a variety of different states, he said, give me the full-blown solution. We're in about 23 other states in some form or another, but West Virginia is the one that's gone deepest in this. And they're really excited about the fact that they have that first mover advantage, that they've created this title clearinghouse. And what's interesting is it's not only going to save them enormous amounts of money, but once clearinghouse is fully up to speed, they're going to make money with their Bureau of Motor Vehicles instead of it being a line item on their budget.
And so talk about the economics of this. Is there economic value to the state other than the fees that DMV is going to be able to generate? Is it creating jobs in any way?
Well, what it's doing is it's saving everybody in the ecosystem a lot of money. So you got the paper that these things are printed on no longer has to be there. Their antiquated computer systems were costing them a lot of money. They didn't have to pay for the development of the system. That was a big deal. And they get much more fee income than they would have gotten in the past.
And I do have to share your view that the leadership of the governor really does speak volumes here, that many states are recognizing, or frankly should be recognizing, that the way they've done business in the past is really going away. We all know about the Rust Belt. We all know that manufacturing is largely moved outside the U.S., that we're struggling to create high-paying jobs. We went from blue collar to white collar, and now we're moving to green collar, creating jobs that are not bad for the environment, jobs that are able to provide really good incomes for the population. And many communities at the local level, let alone the state level, are realizing they've got to reinvent themselves. And so I think that the governor's acknowledgement that West Virginia has not been known as a titan of business, this is an opportunity to do so. Some people argue that the state of Delaware became a big deal about trusts because what else did the state of Delaware have to offer? And so you champion a new sector of the economy, you can really transform the state and all the prospects and for everybody living in it. So kudos to the governor for recognizing that fact. Can you give us an idea, Bernie, of life with this process? Let's say that I'm a car buyer and I, as part of it, as you'd mentioned, I'm going to deal with getting the title to my car. Tell me I think we all know what that experience is in the car buying process, but what is the experience via Champ titles and going through the blockchain technology platform that you're using?
So dramatically easier and most importantly, dramatically faster. So typically, like if you go into let's call it an inefficient state, you buy the car, you get a paper plate in the back of your car. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes having a paper plate in the back of their car. You got snow, rain, this thing gets all crinkled up. You forget that it's even back there. So you start calling the dealer, where's my car, where's my plates? They can't get you plates without the title. And during the peak of COVID, in California, it was taking 6 months to get a car title. Think about that, right? So, and the banks hate it because they've lent money on that asset and they want to make sure it's securitized. So for 6 months, they're wondering, where's my asset? Do I actually have a lien on it? So we're able to take that process, and it's virtually instantaneous, like literally a day. So you buy a car at a dealer in West Virginia, within a day, the title securitized, if it's a lien, or the leasing company has the title in their possession, or the consumer has the title instantaneously. So now you can sell it, dispose of it. This clearinghouse allows you to move it from one state to the other very, very quickly without Federal Expressing paperwork back and forth, that type of thing. So it's a huge savings to everybody in the ecosystem, especially one that you probably didn't think about, which is insurance companies. Because when a car is totaled and there's a loan, the insurance company has to pay off the bank. They wait for the check to clear. They mail the title. Sometimes, believe it or not, they don't mail it Federal Express. They mail it snail mail. So we took insurance companies from 60, 70, 80 days to resolve a claim down to 2 or 3 days.
That's pretty remarkable. But explain to me the logistic element for the consumer. You know, as you mentioned, in the old system, I got a piece of paper. Now, it might have taken me a while to get that piece of paper, but ultimately I have a piece of paper and I can safeguard it in my house. But if there is no paper any longer, it's merely a digital file. Where's that digital file? How do I receive the digital file, and how do I store it and safeguard it?
So a few ways. We can give you a secure link to a website where we call it a title vault, where you see it there. Or what we're seeing most clients do is they put in their Apple Wallet, like your boarding pass, it sits there. So it's there. You can see that it's in your name, and you have it. Like, think about how we transitioned from boarding passes that used to be mailed to you. I'm old enough to remember. You're flying somewhere, somebody mailed you a boarding pass. I don't think anybody under the age of 30 watching this has no idea what I'm talking about. But now it's this barcode that you scan in when you check in at the airport.
So what happens if I'm assuming that if I use your online vault for storage of the title, that I get a password, I have a username and password. What happens if I lose that? What happens if I download the title to my smartphone, and I lose my smartphone, I lose my passwords, or my smartphone gets hacked, et cetera, et cetera? What are the safeguards and protections with all that?
Yeah, so all that's built into the system. So the digital title lives, and actually it's West Virginia as the controller. It's just our system, but it lives in their system. So all the data exists in our system that we provided for West Virginia. And if any of the items that you just mentioned happen, that digital title is still safeguarded by West Virginia. In other words, West Virginia is the one keeping track of who owns that car in an immutable ledger that we produce for them. So when you transfer it, there is a process that you have to follow that's not as simple as just hitting a button. You have to follow a process to sell it, bill of sale, et cetera. All of that electronic safeguards exist in the system itself.
So it's obvious through your explanation that this is clearly safer and faster. And by being safer and faster, I can envision that this is translating into cheaper on behalf of the companies that are involved, the banks, the title settlement companies, the insurance company, certainly the car dealer. I can see how all of those are generating benefits economically through lower cost of operation. Is any of this going to trickle down to the car buyer? Is the consumer going to see any savings?
Well, the consumers are all taxpayers, right? So West Virginia just announced a record income tax cut. These are the things that government needs to do. Government cannot continue to tax people. They're going to run out of people to tax. So what you got to do is you got to lower the cost of government service delivery. I'm talking to you about literally the most boring thing on earth, car titles, right? And I'm telling you that in one state, we're saving millions and millions and millions of dollars on just car titles. Imagine, take 50 states, take a look at Medicare delivery, healthcare delivery, all kinds of licensing. There's just so much money that can be saved through a more efficiently run government. The problem we have is that we have politicians that have never done anything in their lives, so they really don't even understand it. So for them, it's just more money, more money, more money, and not about how do you save the taxpayer money, deliver better services for less money. That's what every company on earth has to do. You can't, in a private business, keep raising your pricing and deliver worse service. Well, you can. It's just going to be a very short-term business model.
And governments, unfortunately, have never really had the attitude of customer service, and accountability and responsibility, as you noted. So are you limiting yourself in your career and your business at Champ Titles to the most boring of aspects of car titles, or do you have bigger, grander, broader plans for the company?
The company's vision is to be the world's registry for movable assets. That's what we want to do. So beyond car titles is literally be able to keep track of any movable asset that has some sort of titling to it. So we think the company has an amazing future from that perspective. As you know, one of the hardest things you can do is own a business, and it's something exponentially harder to do is do a startup, especially one that's disruptive. So we've been at this for 5 years. We're now ready to really hit our inflection point. And so the company's future is very, very bright.
And you have political aspirations. You ran for the Senate in 2021.
Well, none of the reasons I ran for the 2021-22 seat have changed for me. I think the country is better served by what our founders had in mind, which is people who've done something in their lives, want to go to Washington, D.C. to serve their country. And here's the important part, and then come home. I think the idea that we have a political class or career politicians that are always thinking about their next election, their next raise, their next donor that they have to get fundraising from leads to very bad decisions that we've already seen. So I think voters are really sick of this. I know I am. In West Virginia, we have a senator now, a Democrat senator that's been in office since 1975 and never known anything else. So they can't possibly be thinking about how to provide proper guardrails for our economy because they don't even understand how any of it works. They've never had to deal with it. They've never understood how government can get in the way of business. So for me, somebody who's willing to do that is important. I came from this country legally from South America when I was a kid. It was the greatest gift my mom could have given me. And I have an absolute desire to serve this country to make it better.
We're talking with Bernie Moreno. He's the chairman of Champ Titles. Bernie, if people want to learn more about Champ Titles and more about you, how can they do that?
So on me, you can go follow me on Twitter at Bernie Moreno, Moreno, champtitles.com, also BernieMoreno.com.
And we'll have all of that information in our show notes for you, so it's very easy for you to reach Bernie and Champ Titles. Bernie Moreno, thank you so much for joining us and explaining a real world use case for blockchain technology.
Well, thank you, Rick. And you have a lot of great fans here in Ohio. You've built an amazing business, and thank you for doing what you're doing and really educating Americans on very important things.
How much do you know about blockchain and digital assets?
Did you know Schwab offers a satisfaction guarantee? If for any reason you're not completely satisfied, Schwab will refund your fee or commission and work with you to make things right. You won't find that kind of promise everywhere, but you will find it at Schwab. It's just another way that they put clients' interest at the heart of everything they do. Learn what's included and how it works at schwab.com/satisfaction. That's schwab.com/satisfaction.
You know, people used to tell me that their favorite part of this podcast was The Visit by my wife, Jean. Well, her podcast has gotten so popular, she now has her own website, selfcarewithjean.com. Every Thursday, she launches her new podcast and videocast. You can get this week's right now at selfcarewithjean.com. And you can sign up for her free email updates. You can subscribe to her social media channels. Link in the show notes. That way you'll be the first to know about everything that Jean is doing. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast, leave a review for The Truth About Your Future on Apple. I read all the reviews, and I might share yours on the air. You'll also be helping others discover the show, and I'll appreciate it. Have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday.
The Truth About Your Future with Rick Edelman has been brought to you by Global X ETFs, dedicated to providing investors with unexplored intelligent solutions, and by Invesco QQQ. Anyone can become an agent of innovation with Invesco QQQ. Invesco Distributors, Inc.
Get the truth about your future with Rick Edelman. It's thetruthayf.com.